another ERP software cybersecurity breach, lessons from an ERP implementation, and why organizations pursue digital transformations. Those are just a few of the topics that we're going to cover here in episode 184 of Transformation Ground Control.
Welcome to Transformation Ground Control. Ground Control. The podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation. This podcast features technology agnostic and international discussions related to digital strategy, software selection, implementation, change management, business process optimization, and everything else you need to know to make your digital transformation project successful. Whether you're embarking on an ERP implementation, supply chain transformation, or any other business or digital transformation, this podcast is for you. Now, here's your host, Eric Kimberling.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, welcome to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 184. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. And joining me, as always, is our co-host, Darian Chwialkowski. Darian, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to have you here again. I'm excited for today's show. We've planned for you today, a lot of good topics and guests. We're going to open up the segment by talking through a couple of newsworthy topics, talking about the data breach at ClickBalance, which is an ERP software company that had a pretty significant cybersecurity breach recently. We're also going to talk about how OpenAI has announced a new AI development method. And we'll also get into some social media questions that we've received or questions we've received on social media. We'll cover a couple of those questions and get to our feedback and responses to those questions. And then later in the show, we will have our guest, who's Alex Ivkovic, who is the CIO at a company called CDF Corporation, and they recently went through an IFS ERP implementation. So we're going to chat with him about some of the lessons learned and some of the advice he has for organizations and teams that are about to go through ERP implementations themselves. And then later in the show, after Alex is on, we will talk about why organizations pursue digital transformations. So we'll get to that topic later in the show. But before we do, just a couple logistical things. First of all, this is a weekly podcast that covers everything related to digital transformations, including the people, process, technology sides of change. You can find new episodes every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. And you can also see past episodes of this show by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com as well. And the show is produced by Major Tom Productions and sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, which is an independent consulting firm that helps clients with their digital transformation selections and their software selections and their implementations as well. So you can learn more about Third Stage by going to thirdstage-consulting.com. So before we get into some of the newsworthy topics, Darian, we've got some social media questions we want to get to. What have you got in store for us here today?
Yeah, we have some good comments and questions, I guess you could say, on LinkedIn from a recent graphic that we posted on Eric's LinkedIn page. So I'm going to upload this graphic here for everybody to see. This is the graphic that was posted. And here are some of the comments that we got with it, Eric. So the first one is, Eric, you're doing huge work educating the world about what digital transformation is, what challenges and activities are ahead for those who are starting or at different levels of advancement. Despite this, the general knowledge is dramatically low among management boards and supervisory board members. Maybe it's just my experience, but building a coherent vision of what digital transformation is, leadership, business value, and budget for achieving the assumed goals is beyond most companies. APQC is 100% right. With this, Eric, what do you suggest? Do you agree with this comment, or what do you suggest to companies that maybe do feel like this is something that is beyond them for setting budget, setting goals for their digital transformation? What are some advice you have for those people?
Well, I think the main thing that organizations can do to overcome that challenge and that knowledge gap with what executives need to know and understand about digital transformations is to, first of all, tie it back to the overall company strategy. So if you can speak the language of the executive team and the boardroom, understanding what it is the company is trying to accomplish as an organization, and then tie this project back to that and explain how this project is going to support those higher level goals and objectives, then that's a way that you can sort of translate why something like process improvement can be so important to a digital transformation, especially if you are, part of a team or an organization that's going through a lot of growth and acquisition and Now you're trying to standardize or consolidate operations to become more consistent and act like one company. If that's the goal of the organization, then that would be a very compelling reason why you need to spend more time on process improvement, maybe a little bit less time on the technology pieces, but more on how are we going to create our new operating model going forward? How are we going to create our new business processes to support that higher level vision of, acting like one company? So that's, one way to do it is just start with the overall corporate goals and objectives and work your way back to how will this project or how can this project support those goals and objectives. And generally, that's going to open up the eyes a little bit more than if we just start talking about conceptually why change, if we talk about why process improvement or why change management is so important, just in a vacuum, that's not going to be nearly as effective as if we tie it back to what we're trying to accomplish as an organization.
Right. So you're saying for whoever's coming to the leadership board with the project to explain it in those details, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're trying to communicate and educate up, if you're a CIO, let's say, or you're a project manager on a transformation and you're trying to educate your executive teams on why process improvement stuff, all the stuff you're showing in the graphic here, why all this is so important to, it's not just because of the APQC, which is the source of this data. APQC puts out this study that shows these metrics. That alone probably isn't going to seal the deal or get that level of involvement, but being able to tie some of these concepts back to the overall goals and objectives of the organization and of the executive team, that's a way you can educate up the chain of command if you have to.
For sure. That makes sense. Another comment that we got was, doesn't surprise me that a process-focused company focuses on process. A little self-serving, but okay, I guess. What is your reaction to that comment, I guess, overall?
Yeah, so it certainly is self-serving to share this graphic because it demonstrates why the things we do are so important. So, I've got nothing to hide there, no shame in that, at least from my perspective. But, I think the key here is, the reason we as a company focus on process improvement isn't just because we just wanted to be a process consulting firm just because it's fun work, although it is fun work. That's not the reason. The reason we do it is because we know how important it is and we see how much value it can add to companies and teams that are going through transformation. So, and then of course, this data is not our data. This is a third party that publishes this data about, the importance of process improvement. So yes, it supports what we do and it certainly is self-serving in some ways, but it's also meant to be self-serving for organizations that are trying to be successful in their transformations.
For sure. And our last comment here is, and all of those items can be traced to one root cause, people, from the top down and across. People effectively lead and organized can knock the list down. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a great observation and comment. I agree with that. I think if you have, you address the people side of things, it's not just going to magically ensure that you address the business process side of things, but it's certainly going to give you a strong foundation and give you that, just the foundation for being able to do some of this process work. So yeah, I agree. People, if you're going to get to one root cause and you can address the people side of it, that's going to help you be more successful in the process improvement sides of things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was some great conversation on that post. If you want to check it out, go to Eric's LinkedIn and find this graphic, or if you are listening in, look at this graphic on YouTube and you can kind of make your own opinions on what you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love to hear everyone's feedback there on that post and any other posts that we put out there on LinkedIn and social media as well. So great discussion. Thank you for the questions there. We're going to shift gears here, though, and we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about this data breach at ClickBalance, which is a ERP software company based in Mexico, had a massive cybersecurity breach. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about how OpenAI has announced a new AI development method. So we'll get to those two newsworthy topics here after the break. And then after that, we will have our guest on the show, our first guest, Alex Ivkovic, who is the CIO of a company called CDF Corporation. And he's going to be with us talking about some lessons from his recent ERP implementation. He recently upgraded IFS. The ERP software vendor IFS was the upgrade, and he's going to talk about some of the lessons there. And we'll also later in the show talk about why organizations pursue digital transformation. So be sure to stick around. We've got a lot more to cover. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
sets off an unsuspecting herd, and as you step back into line,
if you are involved in any sort of digital transformation or business change initiative, you will want to download the Digital Transformation Report. With its comprehensive overview of business and technology trends and best practices, this report is a must-have guide for any transformation project or executive team. Download this free report by visiting Third Stage Consulting at thirdstage-consulting.com. You can also visit our website to learn more about us or download independent reports, videos, and other best practices. Again, visit thirdstage-consulting.com today to learn how you can take your transformation to the third stage of success.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So, collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S/4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
with 1,000 lies and a good disguise, hit 'em right between the eyes, hit 'em right between the eyes. We knew I'd go away.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 184. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. And this, of course, is the podcast that has everything to do with digital transformation and independent and tech-agnostic view of digital transformation, including the people, process, and technology sides of change and transformation. So thank you for being here today. We have some interesting newsworthy topics in store for us here today. What do you have for us, Darian?
Yeah, so this first one is a huge data breach at ClickBalance, a Mexican ERP firm that exposed over 750 million records that contained sensitive information such as API keys, secret keys, bank account numbers, tax IDs, and email addresses. The unprotected database, discovered by cybersecurity researcher Jeremiah Fowler, I believe is how you say his last name, was quickly secured and after being reported. However, it remains unclear if any malicious actors accessed the data before it was secured. Such breaches like this highlight the risks of unprotected databases and their potential for significant cyber threats. Eric, with cybersecurity threats like this, what are the immediate steps that ERP firms should take when a data breach of this magnitude occurs?
That's a good question. Yeah, when a breach like this happens, first of all, you have to sort of go into PR mode, crisis control mode, as far as communicating to customers and making sure that you've communicated, first of all, that there's a problem. Second of all, what it is you're doing about it. And if you don't know what you're doing about it, you want to figure that out as quickly as possible so you can communicate that to your customer base. So I think people are on high alert right now with cybersecurity breaches in general. So I think making sure that you are just aware of that and communicate accordingly. That'd be the first thing. But as far as like the technicality of like how to fix the breach. I mean, obviously, you just want to fix it. I know that's a oversimplification, a gross oversimplification of the process, but it really depends on what the actual breach was and what the problem was. But I'd say you've got to get a solution, at least a plan in place as quickly as possible, and you've got to communicate with your stakeholders and your customers as quickly as possible.
Yeah. So speaking of clients and letting them know, what does that next step look like then? And what strategies do you recommend for supporting the clients afterwards that are affected by the data breach?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I mean, I think you have to reassure them first of all, what it is you're going to do to fix the problem at hand, but also what you're going to do to preempt or to proactively address the challenge and make sure it doesn't happen again, or at least that same type of breach doesn't happen again. So those are a couple of things I'd recommend there.
Is there anything that companies can do on their side to help themselves with these risks of ERP firms and cybersecurity hacks potentially affecting those firms? Can the clients do anything on their side to help protect their data any further, or is it really left to the ERP firms?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of the control has been given up to the cloud providers. So, they're the ones that have the security protocols and need to have the right protections in place to protect against hacks and sort of the more nefarious, intentional cybersecurity attack sort of thing. But so that part is a lot more difficult, I'd say, because the cloud providers are the ones that need to provide it. And you have to, in some ways, trust that they're going to provide the level of security that you need. But I think just as big of a risk, maybe even a bigger risk, is not so much the hackers, the outside people that are going to come in and hack your system. It's the people that are touching the data every day, the employees that don't fully understand, or they accidentally create a security issue that isn't really a technical issue. It's more of a human user type of issue. So I'd say that's where companies do have control, as far as how you set up security profiles and how you lock down certain sets of data and ensure that you have someone who's really watching and protecting your data. Because it's just as likely that something is going to happen with an employee internally as it is to be, an outside hack. In this case, 750 million records affected or exposed. That's a massive cybersecurity breach. Obviously, that's a big deal. It's a big impact. So, that does happen clearly, but what's even more common, a little bit more under the radar that you don't hear as much about, is all the data breaches related to employee mistakes, just human error. So I think training people, having tight processes and controls and security profiles, those are the things that companies can do something about.
For sure. And with that kind of maybe the things that you don't hear as often and the big ones, where do you see the future of data security evolving for ERP systems with all of these different breaches happening across all different levels?
I mean, it just underscores how important it is, because it's just going to keep getting more and more intense, I think, over time, as more data is moved to the cloud, and as more you get some of these bigger hyperscaler type companies that are hosting mass amounts of sensitive data in their data centers. They just are creating bigger bullseye, bigger targets. So it's sort of like the stakes are getting higher, and because the stakes are getting higher, it sort of perpetuates the need to have a solid cloud provider that has good cybersecurity protocols in place, because they have so much to lose. When something like this happens, it's a big deal, and you don't want to lose customers over it. So so those are some of my thoughts there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm really excited to kind of switch gears here and get into an AI topic, which is something that I don't know if we've talked about lately, especially with new methods of AI getting developed. So this next article is about how OpenAI has announced a new AI development method focused on safety. I know safety is something that we have talked a lot about, and how AI is going to develop with all the different regulations that aren't out there yet, and what that kind of will look like in the future. So I think this article really talks about that first step. So what they're implementing is using a rule-based rewards, or RBRs, to align model behavior without extensive human data collection. This approach follows the reassignment of safety executive Alexander Madry to a new project raising concerns about OpenAI's commitment to safety. The method aims to ensure AI behaves safely behaves safely by using predefined rules, but acknowledges potential risks such as reduced human oversight and amplified biases. The change comes amid scrutiny and criticism from industry observers and regulatory bodies over AI currently. With this new method that they're using, Eric, what do you think the potential benefits and challenges are of using a rule-based rewards in ERP systems for AI?
That's interesting. I hadn't heard it, so I'm not super familiar with it. So it's really interesting. So I think there's a lot of potential there. It sounds interesting. I haven't really thought through though, kind of what the implications are, how it might improve or affect the industry.
For sure. But speaking of that, how do you find, or how do you think the balance for AI automation with maintaining adequate human oversight at the same time is important for AI and ERP systems?
Yeah, it's real important because, like you said, I mean, you talk about this rules-based concept, and the humans, the human intervention or the human input is what needs to define what the rules are, and it needs to modify and pivot, as the rules need to evolve, and only humans going to be able to do that. So, we still need to be able to direct AI and tell AI what to do, almost like we would, an employee or a team member that you're collaborating with. You have to communicate with them on what it is you want or need or hope from that person. So, you've got to treat AI the same way and make sure that you've got that engagement, that human engagement as part of it.
For sure. And how do you think that ERP firms should prepare for potential regulatory changes concerning AI safety and ethics? I think this is definitely like one of the first steps that we're seeing in that route, but how do you think people should, or companies should, prepare for the future of this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know because it's in some ways I feel like there's going to be so many different global regulations from different global government entities that you're going to have to, they're inevitably going to regulate. I mean, it's just a matter of how severe and what are the regulations and when is it going to happen. But I don't know that any of us really know how it's going to get regulated. So I don't know. I think just being, I'd say the best thing you can do is just be flexible and nimble and know that you're probably going to have to change or adjust, as the regulatory landscape shifts and changes here in the next few years.
For sure. I definitely think this is a step in the right direction as far as trying something out to add regulation to the AI. So I think it's cool to see that kind of develop, like we've been talking about on this podcast for quite some time now.
Yeah, absolutely. So it'd be cool to keep an eye on that and see how things unfold there. And speaking of keeping an eye on things and learning, we're gonna have a guest on the show here in just a moment. Alex Ivkovic, who is the CIO of CDF Corporation, and it's a mid-sized manufacturing company. I'll let him describe himself and his company, but they're a mid-sized manufacturer that recently went through an IFS ERP implementation, actually an upgrade to a newer version of IFS. So even if you're not implementing IFS, if you're implementing any sort of ERP system, it's going to be a great discussion you'll want to stick around for, because we're going to talk about some of his lessons and some of his takeaways and his advice to others that are going through the process just based on his recent experience. So stay tuned. We're going to have Alex on the show here in just a moment. And then later, after Alex is on the show, we'll talk about why do organizations pursue digital transformation. So be sure to stick around for that. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control. Hi, this is Eric Kimberling with Third Stage Consulting, and I want to invite you to join our annual tech agnostic conference called Digital Stratosphere. Digital Stratosphere is a conference that features some of the industry's brightest minds, greatest thinkers, and it's a great opportunity to network with peers, other industry people, other CIOs, other project team members that are going through digital transformations or ERP implementations. We've got a great lineup of speakers this year. It's a 3-day event, a lot of great entertainment, networking opportunities. I'll be there as one of the keynote speakers, along with some of my favorite speakers in the industry as well, both within Third Stage Consulting, but also outside the company as well. So I encourage you to check it out and learn more. You can go to stratosphere2024.com to learn more about the event. You can see the agenda, the way it's shaping up, and you can see some of the past testimonials of people that have attended. And the event is October 2nd through the 4th, 2024. It's going to be based in Denver, Colorado, downtown Denver, beautiful downtown Denver in the fall, which is a great time to visit Denver if you haven't been. Again, stratosphere2024.com. Check out the agenda. Check out our early bird pricing for passes. And the other beautiful thing is if you can't be here in person in Denver, which we hope you can, but if you can't, you can also join remotely as well. We have virtual passes available as well, so you're able to join from wherever in the world you might want to join from. So stratosphere2024.com, check it out, and I hope to see you there.
The last thing you want to have happen is for your digital transformation to end up in court. I've been doing this for 20 years and I have seen everything. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney focusing my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts and litigating software disputes across the country. Feel free to reach out to us at taftlaw.com. We'd love to talk to you about the litigation process and what you can expect.
Roman cavalry choirs are singing, Viva, Viva, my sword and shield. The missionaries in a foreign field. For some reason I can't explain, I know St. Peter won't call my name.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 184. My name is Eric Kimberlin here with Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. And the show is produced by Major Tom Productions, sponsored by Third Stage Consulting. And Third Stage Consulting is an independent, tech-agnostic consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. So excited for our guest here today. First-time guest on the show. His name is Alex Ivkovic. He is the CIO of a company called CDF Corporation, mid-sized manufacturing company based here in the United States. As he'll discuss here in just a moment, CDW is a company that has gone through, CDF is a company that has gone through some acquisitions and trying to really consolidate and bring together different operations in the organization. And they recently went through an IFS ERP upgrade and implementation, if you will. So he's got a lot of good lessons here that we can learn from and some good tips and takeaways that we want to share with the audience here today. So with that all being said, Alex, thanks for joining today.
Well, glad you have me, and should be interesting show. Look forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to have you here. First time you and I've had a chance to interview in this format. But for those that don't know you, maybe just tell us a little bit about you and your role.
Sure. My name's Alex Ivkovic. I'm the CIO for CDF Corporation, and we have a number of companies under that umbrella. We have ChairPack in West Bridgewater, Massachusetts. We have QuadPack in Värnamo, Sweden, and we just picked up a new company called Esperacle in Barcelona. So we're mid-market, about 500 employees total between the companies, and we deal in packaging. We make stuff out of plastic, shipping containers, all the way down to those pouches you see in the grocery store for kids' food. We make about half of those in the U.S., actually.
Okay, great. So mid-sized company, make packaging materials and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Is that, yeah.
Pretty
Tell us
much
a little bit. I mean, how hard can it be, right?
Well, everything's simple, right?
Right. If only. But so tell us a little bit about the situation, sort of the landscape of what, this project, when you went through this ERP project. Tell us a little bit about where you were, where you're starting from, and where you're going to.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been on IFS for about 17 years now. And, I know there's people listening with SAP and Oracle and different infrastructures, but IFS massively redid their product, basically. They went from an app sort of based system to an online system, cloud version. And it was basically huge changes. The upgrade process was a bit complicated, and so it was what I call a very major upgrade in the system. The user interface changed completely, just anything you could think of. So it was a process. It took us about 9 months. We learned a lot from it. We went live in November. We tend to do our major upgrades on Thanksgiving. I hate to take my people's Thanksgiving holidays away, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Just to be clear, we manufacture 24 hours a day, 363 days a year. So uptime is big for us.
Yeah. I imagine a lot of people listening are in that same boat, needing that sort of reliability and uptime with their system. How big of a change?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, how big of a change was that, being on the same system for 17 years and then upgrading to a newer version of the same software? Was it more or less difficult than you thought, just the magnitude of change and the impact to the company?
It was big. It was sort of interesting. And in talking to other users and stuff, they saw kind of the same thing I did, where newer users actually had less problems than the experienced users. The change thing is always tough for people. And the system operated basically the same way. There wasn't massive functionality difference, but the user interface was completely new. One fortunate thing was they put the new user interface into the old version. So we're able to convert people over slowly into the user interface. So when we went live on the new version, it was less of a strain that we had to do the whole thing, obviously, user interface and functionality as well.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I imagine after 17 years, a lot changes with the technology, and there's a lot of nuances, I imagine, that probably add up over time as far as just the volume of changes and the.
Well, sure. And we had upgraded the old version too, obviously. We were on their latest and greatest, but it was just, this was a massive sea change in systems.
Yeah. And while I'm getting into some of these questions with you here, Alex, I'd love to hear from the audience. Just where are you all joining from today? We tend to get a global audience here joining us. I'd love to hear what city and country you're joining from today. If you don't mind just dropping in the chat, we're watching the chat with any questions or comments you have. So that's a good place to start with, just understanding where everyone's joining from today. So thank you all for being here. And so had you been through an ERP implementation before? What was your experience with ERP projects in general prior to this upgrade that you guys just went through?
Well, I put the original IFS system in. We were on a system called Glovia, and they were still green screens. We went from green screen to a, modern ERP system, and that was on version 9. So we went, or 8. So we went through 2 major upgrades of IFS, over the past 17 years.
Gotcha. Okay. So when you think about this project, what were some of the biggest surprises or lessons learned, as you went through this upgrade process?
Lessons learned. I wish that maybe we'd spent more time on the new interface. We kind of did a lot of self-training and had people go on their own. And I kind of wish I don't have the staff to do it anyway, but I wish that we could have spent more time on that, because that turned into some of the biggest issues. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, I wish I had planned on having some extra support here for the actual go live. That week after was pretty bad, and I just had my native staff. I probably could have brought an extra person or 2 in, and next time I certainly would. That would have been very helpful.
Right. Yeah, that's sound advice. A good lesson learned there for sure. Just turning to the audience here, just want to thank everyone who chimed in on where they're joining from today. Darian's joining from Denver. Ard is joining from Netherlands. Alcinda from South Africa. Mark from Belize. Sounds pretty. I've never been to Belize, but I've always wanted to. Fehi from Algeria, North Africa. Ivan from Croatia. Thank you all for being here today. Moses from Canada in Ontario. So thank you all for joining here today. Great to have you all, and love to hear any questions you have for Alex here related to his experience with his recent ERP project. So when you were going through this project then, and you were getting ready for the upgrade here, you said it was a 9-month project. What did the planning process look like? Like, how did you, from the time you decided that you were going to go through this upgrade and go through this project, what was it you did to get ready? Like, what were some of the, high level steps or lessons you had in that planning phase of the project?
So let me take a step back for a minute, right? So when we went from 17 years ago, we went from Glovia to IFS. They hadn't upgraded in many years. And so I sat down with management, and we're a privately owned company. So it's, fairly easy to talk to, basically. And we made an agreement that we would upgrade our ERP every 3 years, come rain or shine. And that's really kind of served me well, because, a lot of people I talk to, they have to get into an argument with management. Why are we upgrading? What's it going to cost? What's it going to do for us? Blah, 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 blah. And I said, okay, we don't want to be back in this boat where we're 8 years behind. It's a mess, and it's almost impossible to upgrade. So they agreed to that. And we've done that consistently for the last, like I said, 17 years. We've upgraded every 3 years. So we kind of knew where we were going and when we were going to do it. So that, Thanksgiving was ordained well in advance. So we started poking around with it probably a year before then, knowing it was coming and knowing how huge of an upgrade it was. IFS already had this version 1 of this new system out. at that point, so we could look at it. So we started by getting it live and playing with it and getting our data in there, and my team going in and trying different things. We invited people. We didn't open it up at that point, but we invited people from other divisions to come in and look at stuff and run stuff. The other important point, and it's one I'm very proud of, is our ERP is completely unmodified. We don't have a single modification. That is extremely unusual, I guess, but it is amazing when you're doing an upgrade or trying to fix something or you have a problem. During the initial upgrade way back when, I kind of looked at people and they were like, oh, we have to have it this way. And I'm like, I get that, but we can't do that right now. But I'll tell you what, let's just try it the native way. And you come back to me in a few months. And if you really can't get your job done or things really don't work, then we'll go ahead and we'll look at a modification. And, as I hoped, after a few months, people were so used to doing it the new way that we were able to stay away from it. So over the years, we've not had a modification. Now, IFS has a really robust custom field system and custom LUs. And we do use those. That's not considered a modification, and they're covered in upgrades. So we can put, data from another screen on one screen, and we can do some calculations, and we can do a lot of stuff inside of IFS to customize it to what people need without it being a modification. We also use some outside vendors. Cedar Bay springs to mind. Well, they're arc-wide now. And we do modify some of their stuff. So gun transactions to make the shop floor stuff go better and things like that we will customize. But the actual base ERP system is completely unmodified.
That's impressive. I mean, it's pretty rare. I mean, I know a lot of organizations and teams that strive to do no customization, but to actually achieve that is pretty impressive. It takes a huge amount of
it's been great.
discipline to be able to say.
We do some beta stuff with IFS, and they love us because we're unmodified. You know what I mean? They don't have to look at both sides. There was a question you asked before that I was starting to answer, and I went down that rabbit hole. Could you repeat that one?
I was talking about the planning process, or I was asking about the planning process.
Right. So that was our first piece, is that we moved our data in. We had people start looking at it, testing. And then my team had a discussion with how we wanted to do this. And it basically came down to getting people just used to the new interface first in the old one. And our original plan was we were going to actually shut people off from the old interface and force them to move over. That actually didn't work out because the new interface in the old version couldn't do everything, but it did get people used to it. So that was really worthwhile. The other, and this would go under lessons learned. So we do use a lot of outside partners. We use some robotic software for our accounts payable, for example, which is huge, 85% labor savings according to our accounting department. We have, shop floor guns and scanners all over the place. That's an outside vendor. We use a lot of SCADA stuff. And one of the preparation steps that I probably could have done a little bit better, lessons learned, is I didn't really push the partners to say in writing, yes, we will have this done by this date. It was a lot of, we'll do that. We've done this. Oh yeah, no problem, no problem. Well, when it got close to the implementation, there were some problems. And the partners hung us up as much as anybody. I'm not going to pick on any particular company here, but I think a good lesson to learn is if you have outside vendors, you have to pay as much or more attention to them as you do the core ERP, because they change so much stuff in going from the IFS, we called it Apps 10, to IFS Cloud, that a lot of the vendors had to re-implement their stuff and rewrite their stuff. And in some cases, they completely weren't ready. We went as long as probably a month to 6 weeks without some fairly important systems working. We had workarounds. You can always use the native stuff, but a lot of extra labor and a lot of extra time and stress.
Yeah. It's good. I mean, that's a good lesson, especially when you've got multiple vendors and someone's got to coordinate all that and kind of make sure that it's all syncing up and tying together and integrating the way it should.
And document it. Don't just take their telephone assurance that we're going to be ready. I want an email that says by this date we will have this product ready. You know what I mean? Next time I would insist on that. So as we moved on, we did that. We had people test. I kind of have this theory about testing and users, buy it or not. I think people will test for the first week or two after you send them the email, and then they're going to go back to doing their job and not doing much of anything else. And then when they realize that the upgrade's a week or two away, they're going to panic and do the rest of their testing. The time in the middle, I just find, unless you really push them, they don't do very much. I mean, people basically, a lot of people, if you're accounting, clerks, manufacturing, they want to do their job and go home. They're not interested in doing a lot of extra stuff. So I think you really have to stay on top of the testing process and realize that people have other jobs to do. You can't monopolize their time, and you have to plan it well.
I'm here with Alex Ivkovic, the CIO of CDF Corporation. He's sharing with us some lessons learned from his recent ERP implementation. We've got a lot more to cover, but first we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control. People oftentimes ask me how I built such a strong social media following on YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook and other outlets. And the fact of the matter is it took me a long time to build a following through a lot of trial and error, making a lot of mistakes. Had I known that there were companies out there that could help me build my brand, I would have done that a long time ago. I didn't know that, but the good news is that there is today a consulting firm that will help you through building your own personal brand through some of their training programs. The company is called Roloff Consulting, and if you're familiar with Emma Roloff, she's someone that I've had on this podcast before, and she's well known in the digital transformation space as well as the sales space, and she's big on TikTok, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And she and her husband have started a training course and a training company that focuses on helping people build their personal brands and helping them to sell themselves digitally. So whether you're a salesperson that's trying to reach more customers or you're an individual that's just trying to build your personal brand, that's something that they help with through their training programs. And they've offered listeners of this podcast a free 5-day LinkedIn challenge. And I encourage you to check it out. I've included a link below for this podcast. If you go to the podcast notes, you'll find a link that gets you free access to this 5-day challenge where you'll get step-by-step guidance. You'll get real results. So you'll get some tangible results from the program. And you also get a special offer at the end of it. So it's exclusive to listeners of this podcast. Be sure to check out the link below if you want to work on building your personal brand, or if you're in sales and you're trying to reach more people. Whatever the case may be, check it out. It's free to listeners of this podcast. You can check it out via the link below.
Interested in working for a company that truly values your unique skills and experience? Here at Third Stage, we don't hire based on resumes alone. We look at the full candidate, experience, and willingness to provide excellent service for our clients. Within a technology, independent, and agnostic consulting firm, you have the opportunity to learn across industries with a diverse group of clients. Our consultants also have the opportunity to diversify their portfolio and learn across technology systems. If you're interested in joining a high-growth entrepreneurial organization, please reach out to us at work@thirdstage-consulting.com.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 184. My name is Eric Kimberling, here with Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. You can also listen to past episodes of this show by going to Transformation Ground Control as well. Show is produced by Major Tom Productions and sponsored by Third Stage Consulting. And Third Stage is an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. I'm here with Alex Ivkovic, the CIO of CDF Corporation. We're talking about some of the lessons from his recent ERP implementation. Well, here's a couple interesting comments I want to pull from the audience today.
Sure.
Art has a comment about Glovia. He says, Glovia, really? That's a blast from the past for sure. I haven't heard that name in a while, but they, for a while, were a pretty significant player in especially.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like I said, hadn't been upgraded. I mean, they lasted for a while after that, but we hadn't been upgraded in 8 or 10 years, and it was almost an impossible path.
Yeah. Here's a question from Scotland. This is from JH on YouTube. JH says, joining from Aberdeen, Scotland, did you find that IFS Cloud was feature complete with legacy IFS versions? So kind of getting back to the point of, or the question of how were the systems different? I mean, were there any compelling or surprising functionality gaps or anything that you noticed in the cloud version of IFS versus the legacy version you had been using for quite some time?
Well, that's a really good question. By the time we went live, and it was this past November, so the way the new IFS works, take another step back, it's an evergreen system. So they're saying no more big upgrades, and we're going to do these minor upgrades, and they number them by year. So it's 22R1, 22R2, 23R1, 23R2. And I want to say they started on 21R2, but don't quote me on that. But it's been a year or two. So by the time we went live, it was 23R2. And I would say it was mostly feature complete. I mean, there were some details, obviously. Some things are always going to be different. And a few specific things that stuck out were they took away the keyboard shortcuts. Some of them are coming back now. That drove people. It's those little details that really get to people, right? Sometimes more than the major stuff. I mean, in terms of major functionality, we could manufacture, we could ship. There was no problems there. But some details that they're actually still catching up on. But overall, I say, yeah, we were in good shape.
Right. Yeah. Good stuff. Here's a follow-up question from Art. Kind of getting back to your point a moment ago, Alex, about you're saying how the employees would start and then finish pretty intense, and then there's that gap in the middle where there wasn't a lot going on, or there wasn't as much work happening potentially. So the question from Art on LinkedIn is, how do you push during a long period? So how do you sustain that momentum and keep things moving along, given that dynamic that you were talking about?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, I think that you can do a formal process and an informal process. So, I told you we have different companies spread all over. So when I'm visiting, I'll, pop into various managers' offices that I know are key, and we'll just talk. Hey, how's your testing going? How's it go? How are you doing? We haven't done anything lately. That upgrade's coming, and when, a week before the upgrade, I only have X amount of staff. So if you have problems, you're going to have problems. And in some cases, you have to get pretty serious about it. And, we don't have time. We haven't tested. Well, okay, but you need to understand something. The day we go live, if there's problems, first we're going to focus on the people that did test and getting functionality for the company working. And if that means you have to go 4 or 5 days without getting help, I mean, I'm sorry, we don't want to torture you, but that may be how it is. If you could test ahead of time and we can find these problems, you're really doing yourself a lot of good. And I think you can send out all the emails you want, but I think that face-to-face, talking to people and letting them know that what's going to happen, like I said, I mean, you got to be a little bit careful with that, because that could sound almost threatening, you know what I mean? But you have to make people understand what's going to happen in a clear way. And certainly it did happen in a few cases where people didn't test, and now they were shocked that things didn't work. And I'm sorry, but what can I do? And then the other thing is to document it. So if you look at something like, I don't know, a customer order to manufacturing, we'd send out emails that say, okay, customer service, just put these orders into the new system, and then send it on to the planners and say, okay, can you plan them in the system? Send it to manufacturing. Okay, can you guys pretend that you're running these orders? And then send it to shipping and say, okay, can you guys pretend you're shipping these orders? So by kind of directing the process from end to end, we could kind of push them to test a little bit. To accounting, can you please test your month close process? For all the different companies.
Yeah. That makes sense. Sounds like a good process. And James on YouTube says, especially the global project, workshops were mandatory for us. So I imagine the more complex, the more dispersed you are, the more disparate the processes are, the more siloed you are, the more, those global workshops become pretty important.
Yeah. One of my issues is, as I say, we cover 4 or 5 different companies, and they're all very different. And so if I was going to take the, say, customer service from each company, I can't really put them into one workshop. I have to have 4 of them, because they're so different that it just wouldn't be smooth. One is going to go off in one direction, the other in another. So that's tough. We did things a little bit different when I was talking about the new interface. So what we did is we gathered together training documentation and videos, et cetera. And we told people, okay, we're going to give you a week and we want you to study this stuff. And then the next week, the IT team is going to be available for some 2-hour meetings. You're welcome to come in, ask whatever questions you have, let us know whatever problems you have. So we tried it like that. It worked out okay. I mean, a formal workshop where you make people sit in it for an hour, we didn't really do that, but I can see where it makes a lot of sense depending on your structure and your organization.
Yeah. And you've got to, that's a good point. You've got to sort of be true to who you are, and you've got to fit sort of your culture and your style as a company, and you're going to have to come up with a different approach, I imagine, based on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, anything we're talking about is going to be different. I mean, it flows from the top down. How does the management work? At some companies, if you threatened that everyone had to sit in a 2-hour workshop, there'd be mutiny. And other companies, they'd be like, yeah, okay, that's normal for us. But
Right.
are there some places where I
Now-
think that could have
now-
helped us? Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, what about from a change management perspective? This is from Alcinda on LinkedIn. Alcinda asks, would you say the need for change management is less important in the upgrade of an ERP system than when changing or replacing the entire system?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, the core system worked the same. It was the interface people were dealing with. There were some changes, and then a lot of crazy stuff. Like for some reason, they renamed database fields. So, but much less change management. If you were bringing in a new ERP system, that's going to be massive. I'm going to assume that the processes are going to change, and that is going to call for some serious change management. So, yeah, I would definitely agree with that statement.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned a moment ago, just a second ago, Alex, you mentioned how, depending on you type of company you are, you might structure the team different, or you might have just different approaches. How did you guys structure the project team, at least at a high level?
We sort of didn't. I mean, I have my team, of IT people, and then we have these different companies, and we just sort of approached them singly. We didn't have a single project team. Now, I think remember that I said we're mid-market, 500 employees, and I think one of the important things I've always believed is someone's got to be in charge. So if you had a problem with the ERP upgrade, you can come see me, and I will either have the answer or know how to get it. I've seen, these similar things that were run by committee, and no one really was in charge, and no one really was responsible, and it's not really a good thing, in my opinion. Now, I understand that a company with 10,000 employees is going to have to structure it differently than a company with 500. That's a different ballgame.
Right. Yeah. So it's a bit more organic, it sounds like, as far as the way you structured the team and kind of worked with the different business units.
Yeah, it was more of a flow. I mean, if we were a 10,000 employee company, I mean, I would obviously you'd have to have more of a team and people in charge, but I think I would still make sure that there was somebody that was specific to each area. So I'd say, okay, you're in charge of the customer service aspect of this implementation, soup to nuts. That's your responsibility. You're in charge of vendor management, all these things, but I think it's just always really important to have someone where the buck stops and you can say, okay, this was your area. What's going on with it? Because a lot of times it's difficult to find someone that can answer a question, and it shouldn't be. How's this going? What's the problem? What are you seeing? You need a continuous pulse on that, or your implementation is going to fall behind and fall through the cracks.
Right. Here's another follow-up question here on LinkedIn. What were the main management challenges you faced during the ERP implementation? How did you overcome them? Good question.
The main management challenges? Once again, just getting people to do the testing and trying to get it done. It's hard to, like I said, I mean, we can talk about a lot of stuff, but in the end, your average user wants to do their job and go home. And if you add too much to their plate, and I have this same talk with management sometimes about other stuff. We can get off of ERP for a minute, and they'll have some great, exciting new project but it's going to take X amount of hours. And I always sort of mention, at least, that look, people have X amount of hours in the day. Even if it's something really good, it still takes time, and you have to be respectful of people's time. So you have to give them enough time to do their testing in a realistic way, and you have to whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think it's easy for us as leaders to say, well, we'll just give them a little extra work, and how hard can it be? And that
100%, right? Because you got to remember something. You're not the only one doing that. If you have, HR wants some little thing, accounting wants some little thing, manufacturing wants another little thing. By the time you add up all the little things, it's a half-time job. And, that's how you're going to cause stress. So you have to figure, I mean, I've heard it said, what was told to us in initial implementation was, You should count on it taking 50, for the people that are really in charge of departments, you should count on it taking maybe 6 months of 50% of their time. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And you better figure out how that's going to happen. And you better convince people that they need to do that. And once again, I think a lot of ERP implementation issues are caused by people just not planning on how much time it's going to take and what that takes out of someone's day, remembering that their primary responsibility has to come first. If we can't put in the customer orders, all the ERP system and testing in the world is not going to help us. If we're not manufacturing, it's not going to help us.
Yeah. 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 And it's, I think a lot of times leaders underestimate the amount of effort that some of these projects take. You talk about all these little things, little requests that people have that start to add up, and chances are pretty high you're not taking away their day-to-day responsibility. You're just adding to their plates. And so you've got to be mindful.
We've all heard a boss say to us, "Oh, how long will that take? 20 minutes?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you're like, "No, actually about a day and a half. So try again." Right.
Right. Yeah.
So I think when you're trying to implement or upgrade or whatever an ERP system, you have to be respectful to the people doing the testing and the implementation, and make sure that your requests are reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you, given that you took this more of sort of fluid approach to the planning and the actual upgrade itself, did you find that it was a little bit more difficult to anticipate some of the impacts, as far as workload and potential capacity constraints in the project? Or how did you navigate that, given that you had this sort of fluid, organic approach to the project?
Just case by case. Just staying on top of everybody and frequent communication is really the key, right? Fortunately, we didn't run into areas that were overwhelming. They just said, "We can't do this. We don't have time." A little bit of grumbling here and there, but overall, I'd say it went fairly smoothly. And like I said, I would credit communication. You have to stay in touch.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's more than just, like you said earlier, it's more than just a couple emails here and there. You've got to find the best way to get the message across to the audience. What about working with technical implementers? This is from Darian on LinkedIn. Darian asks, what lessons did you have working with IFS technical implementers along the way?
We use the IFS has a North American upgrade team that I've dealt with before, so I know them really well, and they were great. One of the things about the IFS upgrade was they completely changed the technical back end of how upgrades work. Previously, basically, they would send me a script and a file, and it would run for 12 hours, and we'd have to do maybe a database upgrade and some things like that. Now, they've made it so you're much more in control of your upgrade environment, which is a plus, but it also it takes a lot more technical work that we weren't doing previously, and no one on my team had ever done. I spent many a night studying the new upgrade system and trying to figure out how it worked exactly. And there's an IFS World Conference coming up in October in Orlando, and I'm actually going to take a class in it just to understand it a little bit better. So it's interesting. I don't know how to describe it. It's just a whole different back end where previously they were doing all the work and now you're doing all the work.
I'm here with Ivkovic, the CIO of CDF Corporation. He's sharing with us some lessons learned from his recent ERP implementation. We've got a lot more to cover, but first we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control. I recently published my first book. It's called The Final Countdown, Strategies to Reach the Third Stage of Digital Transformation. And I wrote this book because I really wanted to find a concise way to share some of my knowledge around digital strategy and how to get started on a digital transformation journey. So in this book, I cover 3 different sections. I cover the people, process, and technology aspects of transformation, with the idea that it's meant to be a starting point, a launching pad for organizations and team members that are going through digital transformations. So I encourage you to buy this book. You can get it electronically, you can get it paperback, or you can get it in hard copy, as I'm holding here in front of you. You can get it by going to thefinalcountdown.com. You can also search for it on Amazon if you shop at Amazon. Otherwise, just go to thefinalcountdown.com. Love to hear your feedback on this book as well. So I hope you check it out and hope you enjoy.
I'm excited to share our newly released 2024 Digital Enterprise Operations Report. This free download is available on the Third Stage website at thirdstage-consulting.com. This report is truly packed full of technology-independent and agnostic insights for your project to ensure that you're strategically optimized for success. Download your copy today with the QR code in front of me or visit our website for more details.
And I'll do anything you ever dreamed to be complete. Yes, I'm nothing that's
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 184. My name is Eric Kimberly, here with Darian and Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. You can also listen to past episodes of this show by going to Transformation Ground Control as well. Show is produced by Major Tom Productions and sponsored by Third Stage Consulting. And Third Stage is an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. I'm here with Alex Ivkovic, the CIO of CDF Corporation. We're talking about some of the lessons from his recent ERP implementation. This is from Marcel on LinkedIn. Marcel says, how mature do you consider the IFS partner ecosystem? As an IFS customer, are you finding it easy to find the top talent / IFS partner to be able to manage the implementation successfully?
Yeah, IFS has grown massively. And Eric, I know you track the market, so I think you can probably vouch for that. And previously, they weren't really big on using the partner infrastructure so much. Now they've expanded. They realized they couldn't organically grow unless they really started to get some help from outside partners. And we have some partners we've used for many years that we like quite a bit. I find them invaluable. They work well with us. I think it's still shaking out a bit. There's a lot of sales and purchasing. There's a fairly large partner called ArcWide now that bought one of our vendors, Cedar Bay, that we've used for many years. So I think it's still shaking out a bit, but overall, I'd rate it pretty high. We were successful using them, and I'm still successful. So we're doing one of those minor upgrades I talked about. We're in the process now, and partners helping me with the technical stuff that was some of the issues. So pretty well.
Right. Good. So what were some of the other challenges? Any other challenges we haven't talked about so far as just challenges or surprises you had along the way as you're going through this upgrade project?
No, the one thing I mentioned is that the new user thing I found was interesting, where people we just hired were fine with it, and people who had been here a long time really had a problem. Some of the database stuff. And one question my boss always asked me that I've never been able to answer: why is printing always the biggest problem? Don't know why. Every ERP implementation or upgrade, printing fails, and reporting and printing are always a nightmare.
Like printing labels, you mean? Like labels and things
No,
like that?
like reports and everything else. Just printing in ERP always seems to be a huge issue. It's just clunky. But overall, I mean, nothing shocked me or surprised me. Everything went kind of like we planned, with the usual hiccups along the road. And if you talk for a minute maybe about a little bit of upgrade philosophy. And one of my core beliefs is that whether it's an implementation or an upgrade, the more fancy stuff, the more you try to add or change processes, the less successful it goes. So when I'm planning an upgrade, you'd asked about the planning process, right? All I want to do on that upgrade day is get everybody's process back to where it was on the old version. If they can come in and just do their job the same way with no improvements at all, I'm perfectly happy. And I know sometimes that's a political issue, because you go to your board or your management and you're like, oh, we're going to get this new system or upgrade, and it's going to have all this cool new stuff, and they want to see it. But the way I look at it is this: you only have X amount of staff and X amount of money and X amount of time. If you can get people back to their baseline, right? And then once that's calmed down and everything's running well, now you take your staff and you focus on different things, and you make improvements and bring in some of these new systems. Now your team can focus on that. They're not being screamed at about 1,000 other tickets from the upgrade process. The people are used to the new system. They can do a better job of implementing. They'll see how it works and maybe some of the advantages. So I'm just a big believer in the simplest upgrade or implementation possible. Get it done, get them on the new system, and now take your time and do a better job of implementing these improvements and these fixes. And like, re-implementation is a dirty word to me. I wouldn't do that in a million years. Let's get it upgraded. Then let's start re-implementing. Even if you want to re-implement, say, your customer service flow or something, do it after. Why make it too tough? The other big advantage is when you have a problem, if you've re-implemented or you're making all these wholesale changes, now you don't know where the problem's from. Is it from the upgrade or is it from the re-implementation? So for all those reasons, I think the simpler you keep it, the better your chance of success. Whether that's an implementation or a re-implementation, keep it simple.
Right. Yeah, it's good advice. You know, the simpler you can make it, the better. There's already enough complexity as there is in these sorts of projects. So why make it
Yeah.
more difficult than it needs to be? So was there, and I guess this question, it sort of relates to what you were saying earlier about the discipline you had to have to not do customization and to, use the software off the shelf, out of the box, the way it was built. But was that a sort of a culture shock to employees, or did you see any aspects of this upgrade process that was a culture shock, or was it difficult for you? Talked about some of the tenured employees that maybe a little bit more difficulty adjusting. But how did you maybe just talk a little bit about the people impact and how you navigated the whole people side of change during this?
It was directly related to how much testing they did ahead of time. I mean, I could tell you exactly which departments tested how much. Like I have 3 different accounting departments, and I can tell you the ones that really got into it and knew everything, the ones that said, we'll fix it later. And some people have the philosophy, if it breaks, they'll have to fix it for us. We'll do it later. But you could really tell who did the testing and who did the learning and who decided not to. And their satisfaction afterwards was directly related to that. The ones that went with the process and did the testing, I think, made it through pretty easy. There was a lot of grumbling from, some people that didn't do that. And so my boss would come to me and he'd say, oh, so-and-so is complaining about the upgrade. I'm like, how much testing did they do? Well, not much. Well, what can I, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's very, very related to that. It's like anything else. Preparation, planning, testing are key. And your satisfaction on the other side is going to be directly related to how much of that you do.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it makes total sense. And I think a lot of times people forget to recognize that the testing process is about testing the software. Of course, it's testing technology, testing processes, but it's also about getting people comfortable. It's getting
100%
to involve, like getting them to own this and to sign off on things. I mean, you're sort of getting the broader organization involved. So you're not just, the IT guy pushing this change to the business.
Yeah, and I try to train my staff now. I mean, even though it doesn't seem directly technical related, soft skills will take you a long way in getting people to do stuff. People appreciate if you walk into their office, have a cup of coffee, relax, talk to them about the project a little bit in ways they can understand. That can really help you along. It can really help your project. People don't necessarily want to be hit with a bunch of technobabble, right? Well, we're going to buy this because, just having those soft skills, I think, is really helpful in making your project successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it buys you a lot of, you have a lot more margin for error, when you've got the people involvement and commitment, that sort of thing.
Sure.
Did you ever have a time where you felt like it was, this is turning into sort of an IT thing and it's harder for us to get the business involved, and especially with the workloads that people are dealing with and that sort of thing? Was that ever a challenge, or did you struggle with that at all through the process?
Oh yeah. I mean, I always wish for more, right?
Right.
There were times where I felt like it's just us and going, oh, this is just not going to go well. People aren't doing enough and it's going to hurt. But, in the end, it worked pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah. Good deal. So if you could go back and do this upgrade over again, you get a mulligan here. You get to start over, do it,
Okay.
do it better. What are a couple things you might change or do differently if you could?
I probably would have got a little bit more help. My IFS specialist was overwhelmed. So I probably would have, maybe for 3-4 weeks before the upgrade, went to one of the partners that was asked about, and they have some very good people. And I think I would have made some arrangements to have some help from possibly 3 or 4 weeks before upgrade day to maybe 2-3 weeks after. I think that would have been really helpful. I would have brought in some temporary help. That's probably the biggest lesson I learned. I'm kind of a go it alone kind of person. I don't really like to pay people to come in, but if I have to, I will. And I think that would have been helpful. And in the I did do a post-mortem, with management, and they were like, yeah, we would have paid for that. That would have been good.
Yeah. That's good. And you mentioned before too, that go live support piece of it. You talked about that too, about how, having more support especially at the time of go live or at the time of the code over. That seemed to be another lesson that you were talking about too.
It's an interesting thing about that. So we went live on Thanksgiving Thursday here in the U.S. for people overseas, right? It's one of the biggest holidays of the year here in the United States, just to set the stage for overseas. Everything's closed. And the companies were closed on the Friday, and then we had the normal weekend shift starting up in manufacturing. And we made it through Monday, and very few complaints. Everybody kind of made it through Monday without a problem. And then Tuesday, it hit the fan. That's when the tickets just started to pour in. We can't do this, we can't do that. But it was interesting. We had that 24 hours of sort of breathing downtime. You know what I mean? And then it just went crazy. I don't know why.
Right. Yeah. Now, what about, let me get to a couple of comments here, actually, before I get to this question. But this is from James on YouTube. James has a comment that says, same here. There's a fine line between handling the migration internally and saving money versus handing it off to consultants.
And it's not only, let's be clear, it's not only just saving money, although that's certainly an aspect of it, but it's also, so you bring a consultant in, now you have to bring them up to speed. They have to be trained. They may or may not work the way you're used to. A consultant can also be a little disruptive. So I think you have to carefully choose and plan how you want to do that. But yes, absolutely, it's a decision. Like I said, it's not black and white, but he asked me what I would do different. I think that's one thing I would have considered doing differently.
Right. Here's a really good question that I'm curious to hear your knee-jerk reaction to this, Alex. But this is from Art on LinkedIn. Art says, what if there are problems and the project is led by an ambitious program manager who's rewarded with a bonus bound to the deadline of implementation only? So
I'd say your structure is wrong. If you have, they should be responsible. They should report to management, okay, this is going to take longer because of X, Y, or Z. And they should be able to back that up and explain it. But to make them financially responsible, you're looking for a problem in my book. I'm assuming this is an internal employee. If this is an external consulting firm, it's a different story. There has to be boundaries because they have no motivation. But if this is your internal employee and his bonus is going to be based on getting this done in time, I wouldn't go for that. I wouldn't agree to that. And that would scare the hell out of me, quite frankly. They should be motivated because they want to do the right thing for their company. And if I can go to management and say, look, we're just not ready, we need an extra month. If they can explain it and say why it happened and have a sit-down discussion about it, then that should be okay without them getting kicked in the pocketbook.
Yeah, it's a good point. Sometimes implementing on time is not the best thing. I know we all, as project managers, the project manager and all of us says, no, you should implement on time. You should implement on budget. Of course, we strive to that, but there are times where it makes a lot more sense to delay a go live or cut over and get it right because the impact and the cost is so much less severe.
100%. Now, I think what you have to watch out for is sometimes it becomes too easy to delay.
Yeah.
You really have to be motivated and driven that you want to hit that date. And you're going to look at it as a personal failure if you don't hit that date. And I certainly do, man. If I missed that date, because we were close on a few things. There were a couple of things I wasn't happy about. But I would have looked at that as a personal failure, and they don't need to hit me in the pocketbook. Management would have known how I felt. And I think that should be all the motivation you need.
Yeah. And I think that, you have to look at, you're kind of getting into strategy and structure here with the project, but, sometimes I think teams and leadership within organizations, they mean well. They say, hey, what if we want to go live on time? So what if we give someone an incentive to hit a go live date? It sounds reasonable enough, right? But if you really peel back
in
and
that sense,
understand,
it does.
but it could drive the wrong behavior. Like to your point, if it could be that, you don't want to necessarily overly motivate someone to hit a date, potentially arbitrary date too, by the way.
Right, because people are going to spend that money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And oh, well, we can't do this. Do we still want to go live? Well, we have to go live. We have no choice.
Yeah.
We had a problem in that we couldn't get Crystal reports running, and that's a very major part of our operation. It's used for operational reporting and even things like shipping paperwork and customer order acknowledgments and everything else. We're having real problems with it. And on the weekend before go live, I literally spent 8 hours on the phone with IFS technical support in Sri Lanka, and it turned out to be one setting wrong in a single file that caused the whole issue. It had to do with allowed IP addresses for the print server, something stupid, but we found it. But if that hadn't have been fixed, I would have had to seriously consider pushing off, because we wouldn't have been able to print order acknowledgments. We wouldn't have been able to do shipping paperwork. It would have been a really big problem. So,
Yeah, another thing too, there's also the incentives that teams sometimes create. They think they want to have a vendor come in at a fixed bid. Let's do a fixed bid, and that way we can contain our costs. That's another thing that just sort of came to mind as you were describing that. Sort of the incentives sort of gets a little bit screwed up, because now you've incentivized your partner to implement as fast as possible and as cheaply as possible, and that's not always the right answer either. So it's sort of like you got to figure out what these unintended consequences are, some of the decisions you make when you're structuring a team or building incentives or trying to motivate a team.
Right. And that's what would worry me. So if we used an outside vendor for the upgrade, right? And so you've got a big penalty clause in there or a big bonus clause if they make a certain date, it's going to be hard for the lower level employees of that vendor, whoever that is, to be able to go to their management and say, guys, we got a problem here. This isn't going to work. Yeah. So that's, I think it's something to be concerned about. I don't, ERP is so critical to a company. I can see using an outside vendor to do work, and maybe it's just me, but I have a hard time completely turning something over to an outside vendor without someone inside the company really being responsible, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. Here's a question from Ellis on LinkedIn. Ellis asks, did you look into independent IFS freelancers or just at the IFS partner staff?
I honestly did not. It's not something that ever crossed my, I don't even know how I'd find them on LinkedIn maybe, but I'm not against it. I just didn't occur to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's a question on LinkedIn. From a top management perspective, how did the leadership team contribute to the ERP implementation process, and what role did they play in driving the project success?
I am a very fortunate person in a lot of ways. And like I said, we're a privately owned company. It's the Sullivan family, and they are great. They give me a lot of support. They let me do what I need to do. They pretty much stay out of the way. But if I need something, they're right there for me. But I realize I'm a lucky guy. That's not the truth anywhere. They, whatever I asked them to do, they would do. And that's very helpful. So, they knew that when I was saying we need to do this testing, it was also coming from them, and it was something important to the company, and they supported that.
Yeah. So you had that support from the ownership level on down.
100%. And they would come down sometimes and ask some tough questions like, I don't know, but in the end, they're very supportive. And I've always actually really appreciated where I work because of that. It's a good atmosphere.
What about your peers? The other C-level, business leaders within the company. Were they as supportive, or did you feel that same level of support, or did you have any pushback on the project?
Everybody's great. There was nobody that really stood in our way or caused problems. Once again, you get back to the testing. So some people whose departments, just felt like they didn't have time, or they felt overwhelmed with other stuff. They obviously weren't too pleased. But in the end, everyone knew what was going to happen, and they were going to have to either, do it or get out of the way.
Right. Yeah. Well, I suppose that all starts at the top. When your owners and your top people are saying, hey, this is important, we're going to invest in this, we're going to support it,
Right, because they had no path. It's not like they could go to the owners and say, "Well, we're just not ready for this. We don't have time. We're not going to do it." That would not be a good career move for them. You know what I mean? And it's fortunate. So we've done like some beta testing for IFS on various products, their CRM system. We've done some robotic stuff with them that's fairly well known on the internet. And I think one of the reasons is, first of all, we have the no modifications. That's helpful. But the other thing is the management will allow me to do, anything reasonable because they know I'm looking out for the company first. So if IFS calls and they want to beta test something, we don't have to go through a board and 25 hoops. We can just kind of agree to do something, and we can be flexible about it. And I think that's it's really paid off for us over the years.
Right. Yeah. Very good. So when you think back at this project and you're sort of reflecting on the project and you're giving other CIOs, other business leaders advice on how to handle their ERP upgrade or their re-implementation, their full implementation, whatever it is, what are the top 2 to 3 keys to success or the top 2 to 3 takeaways you'd leave with anyone that's about to go through this similar process?
My number one would be what we talked about. Keep it simple. Try to implement back to baseline and then grow from there. You'll be much happier. Modifications are evil. Stay away from those. And watch the soft skills. If you can get people with you and understanding and stuff, your implementation is going to be more successful than if you just throw a bunch of technical stuff and some manuals at them. Get people on your side, make them want to help you.
Yeah. And make them part of the solution. And, you talk about testing.
100%. Yeah. And that's going to, once again, that's going to look very different in a company with 500 people versus 10,000. But I think even in a company with 10,000, you can make it personal to some extent. Not, I can't sit down with 10,000 employees and have an hour-long meeting with each one, but, you can be seen, you can be heard, you can be seen to be supportive. And, there's 2 different kinds of help desk systems. There's help desk systems where you're left with the feeling that they really want to help you solve your problem. And there's help desk systems where you're really left with the feeling that they have metrics to hit. And by sending this email to you on time, they've now hit their metric and they really don't give a darn after that, right? And I think if you're looked at as the first one, where really your issue is to solve people's problems versus you're dogmatic, here's my numbers, I just have to report to management that I solved X amount of problems in X amount of time and everyone's happy, not so much. And it's those users, it's the end users that are really going to make or break you in the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the questions I saw scrolling by was someone asked about key users. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that surprised me a little bit was you can't always identify key users by how you think they're going to be. So we had in one of the companies, we had a customer service person that was newly hired. He'd been there like a month. And he turned out to be a huge asset. He loved testing everything and working with us to make it done. But I didn't even know the guy's name when we started. And there are other people who've been there for years that I would have thought, oh, they're going to be involved in this, and they just really weren't that interested. So key users, yes, but give everyone a chance to become one. I think that would pay.
All right. Thank you, Alex. Great conversation. Learned a lot from you and some of the lessons that you and your team have and shared with us here today. We're going to debrief and cover a couple of these, some of the takeaways and some of the lessons from that conversation. But first, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
Just tell me what you've got to say. Tell me, I've been waiting for so long to hear.
I'm excited to share our newly released 2024 Digital Enterprise Operations Report. This free download is available on the Third Stage website at thirdstage-consulting.com. This report is truly packed full of technology-independent and agnostic insights for your project to ensure that you're strategically optimized for success. Download your copy today with the QR code in front of me or visit our website for more details.
Hi, this is Eric Kimberling with Third Stage Consulting and your host of Transformation Ground Control. I want to encourage you to read our Guide to Organizational Change Management. It's a free report or free guide that we publish. It's one that I actually wrote that talks about best practices and lessons learned as it relates to change management. So as you know, on this podcast, we cover a lot of stuff related to the human sides of change, organizational change management, including training, communications, org design, all kinds of stuff as it relates to change management. So if you're trying to learn more about change management, or you're looking for more direction and ideas on how to get started on your change management strategy and your overall journey, be sure to check out this guide. You can read it by scanning the QR code on the screen in front of you, or in the links below for this particular podcast episode. You can find a link to take you to the page that'll allow you to register to go ahead and download that and read it for free. So be sure to check it out. It's the Guide to Organizational Change Management, written by yours truly. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think, and hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. Hello, welcome back to the Transformation Ground Control Podcast. My name is Eric Kimberling. This is episode number 184. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. The show is produced by Major Tom Productions and sponsored by Third Stage Consulting. And Darian, we just had Alex Ivkovic on the show, and he was talking about some of the lessons from his recent ERP project. What were some of your thoughts or takeaways from the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can always learn a lot, especially from someone that recently just went through an implementation, because their experience and what challenges they faced is something that for a lot of companies they could probably relate to in the future when they are going through their implementations. So I think it's definitely really important to listen to those conversations, so hopefully you can avoid some challenges or mistakes that maybe they made along the way, or just have a knowledge of, you know, what you're getting into and what to expect for your implementation. So I think that's always really important. I know he shared a lot of different things, and you asked him quite a bit of different questions about his project and, you know, the challenges that he faced. But I want to know from your experience, what are some of the lessons or tips that you would suggest to companies to prepare specifically for an IFS or just an ERP implementation in general?
Well, you know, first I thought it was interesting that he, you know, getting back to what Alex shared with us, you know, he was talking about how they took this more sort of an agile, organic, flexible, nimble approach to the implementation. It wasn't overly structured. It wasn't overly complex. And it, you know, it seemed to work for them. You know, it seemed to just be the right approach that sort of fit their culture and who they are. But he also mentioned that, you know, you're going to have different strategies or different approaches depending on your size and complexity and everything else. So there's a lot there that I think he shared that it was really interesting to hear his perspective, because he does have a unique approach and perspective to how he approached this project. And again, it seemed to work for them, but I could also see that same approach not working for other companies potentially. And I imagine if he would have tried some of the approaches that we might recommend other companies, they might not work for him either. So I think just, you know, sort of being self-aware and really recognizing who you are, and, you know, recognizing that, you know, if you are a bigger company or you are more disjointed and you have silos and you're trying to break down those silos as part of your process, you might actually spend more time upfront planning and spending more time diving into business process improvements and, you know, investing in change management. Some of those things might become more important to you, you know, if you're in a different situation. So that's the main thing I think with him is just, you know, I think it was a really interesting perspective. I don't think we've had anyone with that exact perspective on here before. And so it was really interesting to hear that, some of his thoughts, and see what worked for him.
Definitely. And I know what you're talking about, because he was saying, you know, your approach is going to be a lot different for a company that has 500 people versus 3,000 people. And that approach might look different, but I still think the company with 3,000 people can learn, you know, from the company that went through the implementation with 500 people and see what worked for them, and maybe take different bits and try and use some of that strategy. Obviously, each company is going to be different, but if it sounds like something that maybe could work for your company as well, it's always good to be able to pick apart different strategies that other companies are using and try to use that on your strategies.
Yeah. Sort of like we, you know, in this podcast, you know, we bring a big, huge toolbox of all these different options to you. And, you know, your job is to figure out, you know, which nuggets or tools are going to work best for your situation. And there's not many sort of one size fits all answers out there. I mean, I can tell you right now what I think most organizations should probably do, you know, to get started or to plan or to execute on their digital transformation. But, you know, that's without knowing the nuances of who you are. And, you know, you've got to dial it in and sort of dial it into exactly who you are as an organization. So that's the good news, bad news, I suppose, with these projects, is there's so many different variables and so many things to consider that, you know, we just hope to educate the audience here and helping understand what some of the different options are.
Yeah, absolutely. Overall, I thought it was a great conversation, and I hope that the audience got a lot out of it as well.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully they did, and great to have him on, and we'll try to have him on again, and others like him. That can speak more from the CIO seat. The client perspective is always good to hear. It's always good to hear a client or a customer talking about what they thought about the project and what they would have done differently and what they learned. So that's really good stuff. Well, good. Well, we're gonna shift gears, and when we come back, we're gonna talk about why organizations pursue digital transformation. So it's actually a YouTube video we recently published on my YouTube channel, and it talks about some of the main reasons or the top reasons why organizations go through digital transformation. So when we come back from a quick break, we're gonna play you that video, and then we'll sort of debrief and deconstruct that video a bit. So be sure to stick around. We're gonna take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control. Hi, this is Eric Kimberling with Third Stage Consulting, and I want to invite you to join our annual tech agnostic conference called Digital Stratosphere. Digital Stratosphere is a conference that features some of the industry's brightest minds, greatest thinkers, and it's a great opportunity to network with peers, other industry people, other CIOs, other project team members that are going through digital transformations or ERP implementations. We've got a great lineup of speakers this year. It's a 3-day event, a lot of great entertainment, networking opportunities. I'll be there as one of the keynote speakers, along with some of my favorite speakers in the industry as well, both within Third Stage Consulting, but also outside the company as well. So I encourage you to check it out and learn more. You can go to stratosphere2024.com to learn more about the event. You can see the agenda, the way it's shaping up, and you can see some of the past testimonials of people that have attended. And the event is October 2nd through the 4th, 2024. It's going to be based in Denver, Colorado, downtown Denver, beautiful downtown Denver in the fall, which is a great time to visit Denver if you haven't been. Again, stratosphere2024.com. Check out the agenda. Check out our early bird pricing for passes. And the other beautiful things, if you can't be here in person in Denver, which we hope you can, but if you can't, you can also join remotely as well. We have virtual passes available as well, so you're able to join from wherever in the world you might want to join from. So stratosphere2024.com. Check it out, and I hope to see you there.
The last thing you want to have happen is for your digital transformation to end up in court. I've been doing this for 20 years and I have seen everything. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney focusing my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts and litigating software disputes across the country. Feel free to reach out to us at taftlaw.com. We'd love to talk to you about the litigation process and what you can expect.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 184. My name is Eric Kimberling here at Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of the show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. And the show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, which is an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. You can find new episodes by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. So we want to play this video here, this YouTube video that I recently published on my channel. It's called Why Do Organizations Pursue Digital Transformations? And it goes into the top reasons why we see organizations go through transformation. So with all that being said, let's roll the video and then we'll come back and we'll debrief on some of the points in the video here.
One of the first questions we ask clients before we get started on a digital transformation with their journey is to understand why they're going through the project. What is it they're trying to accomplish as part of their digital transformation? What is their goals? What are their objectives, et cetera? And so what's interesting to do is talk about what the biggest reasons are why most organizations go through change. And that's what I want to talk about here today. Now be sure to stay tuned to the end of the video because the last thing I'm going to cover is the single worst reason why organizations go through digital transformations. In fact, I want to invite you to guess what you think it is. Just drop a comment in the comments field below. Love to hear your thoughts on what you think the worst reason is for organizations to go through digital transformations. Before we dive too far into today's content, I want to share a little bit of information about Third Stage Consulting and who we are. Third Stage Consulting Group is an independent technology agnostic provider of consulting services to help clients through their digital transformations. We help with digital strategy and software selection, as well as implementation planning. And during implementation, we provide services related to program management, organizational change, business process improvement, as well as enterprise architecture. These are just some of the services we provide. We have offices in North America as well as Europe and Asia Pacific. So if you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to check out our resource center, which includes a number of resources that will help you through your digital transformation, and you can access that for free using the QR code here or the links below. You can also reach out to me directly if you'd like to discuss your digital transformation and brainstorm ideas on how to improve where you're headed on your journey. Now let's jump back into today's content. The first reason why organizations commonly go through digital transformations is because they need to scale for growth. Perhaps they've grown organically and they've outgrown their current system. Perhaps they've gone out and acquired other organizations or merged with other organizations, and now they're operating disparately and they want to start acting like one organization. That's a way to help them scale and to grow faster and have the infrastructure to support their future growth. A lot of the clients we work with are using systems that are so outdated that they're close to breaking. Oftentimes these organizations have systems that were built for when they were much smaller and much simpler, and they've since grown to be larger and more complex, and therefore they need different technologies to help support that growth. So scaling for growth is one of the most common reasons we see organizations use as their main driver for digital transformations. Another common reason for digital transformation is to automate inefficient processes. More often than not, organizations we work with have a lot of manual processes, a lot of spreadsheets and databases and disparate systems, old legacy systems, and in some cases paper-based processes that are very inefficient and consuming a lot of time and money. So for that reason, organizations look to technology to help them automate their business and ensure that they have more of a centralized, automated way to capture information and to run their workflows through the organization. Now, this is something that's especially important in high-cost labor markets. So if you're in a developed part of the world with very high labor costs, efficiency can be material to how profitable your organization is. And even if you're not suffering from high labor costs, just pure inefficiency can slow down your organization, reduce your profitability, reduce your customer experience, and reduce your overall success as an organization. So automating inefficient processes is one of the most common reasons why we see organizations going through digital transformations. Another reason why organizations commonly go through digital transformations is because they want to provide a better customer experience. And what I mean by customer experience is they want to make life easier for customers, and they want customers to enjoy doing business with the organization. If you have old, outdated systems or manual processes, or your customer service reps don't have access to information regarding a customer's order, that undermines the customer experience. So if we can provide technologies and tools and processes and workflows and access to data that makes it easier for us to provide better service to our customers, we're going to increase customer satisfaction and we're going to increase revenue as a result. This is especially important in today's self-service environment. People are used to serving themselves, accessing data themselves, and having transparency into a status of an order. If you think about an order you might place online, if you're visiting an e-commerce site, you're used to getting email updates. You're used to being able to log into your account and see the status of an order. You're used to having that self-service mentality and that self-service transparency, and that's what many organizations are trying to provide to their customers. So providing a better customer experience is one of the top reasons why organizations go through digital transformations. Just as organizations want to use digital technologies to provide a better customer experience, they also oftentimes want to use technologies and tools to provide a better employee experience. They want to make employee work lives easier. They want to give employees tools that they can use and they can train faster, they can onboard faster. And what that does is that just opens up organizations to a bigger employee base. And not only does it make it easier to hire new employees if you have tools that are appealing and easy to use and easy to get trained on, but it also keeps employees around for longer. Because they're not frustrated by old, outdated technologies, they're more likely to stay. It's more likely that they're going to be highly satisfied with their work experience than if they're using an old, outdated system. One of the most interesting dynamics I see still in the marketplace are these old legacy organizations that are using really outdated technologies like mainframe on-premise based systems. Those old systems that had like the green screens, didn't have a graphical user interface. You had to memorize transaction codes to get to the screen you wanted to go to. Some of you may not even know what I'm talking about, but if you do know what I'm talking about, you know that those are very complex systems that are difficult to learn, especially if you're hiring someone that's 22 years old, just finished university. They're not even going to understand how to log into the system, let alone how to use it effectively. It's going to be like speaking a foreign language. And so rather than frustrating and limiting your employee base, organizations are increasingly using digital transformations and new digital technologies to provide a better workplace and a better work environment for its employees. Organizations are increasingly reliant upon and dependent upon good information. Information about what's happening operationally, information about inventory, customer orders, that sort of thing. And so what digital transformation can do for a lot of organizations is provide better access to information. And this has always been a challenge and a top reason for organizations going through digital transformations, but it's becoming even increasingly important nowadays because now we have new technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning and robotic process automation, things that allow us to really game change our business and change our business materially for the better, but only if we have access to good information and good data. So digital transformations are oftentimes a way for us to take all this disparate data and this dirty data that we've been hoarding for years and years, or maybe even decades, and it gives us a way to now access that data and make better use of that data so that we can make informed decisions from that data. So increased access and transparency to data and to information within our organizations is one of the top reasons why organizations go through their digital transformations. Now, next, I'm going to talk about the final reason, which is actually the worst reason why organizations should go through digital transformations. But before I get there, I want you to drop in the comments field below what you think that is. Now, the worst reason why organizations go through digital transformations might actually be one of the most common reasons. In fact, it is one of the most common reasons. For many organizations, it's the number one reason why they're going through digital transformation, but it's also the single worst reason that you can point to on why you're going through a digital transformation. And that reason is because you have to. Because your system is outdated, because your system is being replaced or sunset, your software vendor will no longer support the system, and you have no choice but to move to new technologies. Now, this is going to be the reality for many of you watching this video. Many of you have no choice, and so you can't change that reality. But if that is your number one reason and your primary reason for going through a digital transformation, it's a terrible reason. And the reason for that is because while on one hand it is creating a certain amount of urgency and a certain amount of a burning platform to help you get through the change and through the transformation, which is good, it's also not nearly enough to give your project and your overall transformation direction on what it is you're going to accomplish and what it is you want the organization to look like on the other side of the implementation. So it's imperative that we augment this terrible but necessary reason for replacing technologies with other reasons for improvement. Some of the things I've mentioned throughout this video are good reasons to go through a digital transformation. And by having these other reasons, like wanting to automate processes and specifying which exact processes you want to automate, for example, that's just going to give you better direction and better decision-making parameters as you go through the project. If you don't have a good guiding light or North Star to guide you on your transformation, other than the fact that you just have to replace your technology, you're going to get lost along the way. Your team's going to get lost. You're going to be aimless, and it's going to involve a lot of bad decisions and spinning of the wheels and a lot of inertia that you're fighting to get clear direction on what it is you're trying to accomplish as an organization. So while it's okay and understandable that you may have to change your technologies, you may have no other option than to change your technologies, you want to make sure you have better reasons than just that for going through your digital transformation.
So that was a video outlining some of the top reasons why organizations go through digital transformations. What were some of your thoughts from that video or your follow-up questions, Darian?
Yeah, overall, I really liked how in this video you really emphasized the importance of having really clear objectives beyond just updating outdated systems for your company, which is basically like what you said, the worst reason you could have for a digital transformation. You're really going to want to define what those reasons are and why you need to upgrade. Or if you are a company that doesn't currently have a system, you're a newer company, really defining what you want out of this system to help you, I think is some of the most important things that people could probably take away from that video. But to kind of expand on the content that was in that video, Eric, what are some of the common pitfalls organizations face when automating inefficient processes?
Well, I think probably the biggest one, or one of the biggest ones, is going to be the tendency to want to automate the way we've always done things. So, sort of like, yes, we're automating, we're putting in new technology, but we're going to do it, the process is going to look pretty much the same, just in a new system. And that's not, in some cases it might make sense if you have a really good tight process and it makes a lot of sense for your organization. But more often than not, the processes are ripe for improvement, and there's some sort of, downside or, potential improvement that you might be missing out on if you don't take the time to define those processes up front.
For sure. And I know you talked about how digital transformations can affect customer satisfaction as well. So how do you then measure that impact of the digital transformation on customer satisfaction?
Well, the main thing is recognizing where the touch points are with customer satisfaction and how all the different things that you do with as an organization, how that's affecting and can affect customer satisfaction. That's first and foremost. So kind of really mapping out that customer journey and understanding what the different impacts are, and then starting to recognize from there, what you can be doing to improve that along the way. So there's so many different ways to measure customer satisfaction, but it usually starts with looking at the customer journey, understanding where and how the processes touch the customer and how you might improve that going forward.
For sure. And then kind of the last question to expand on everything you talked about in that video would be, what technologies have you found the most effective in improving employee experience for digital transformations?
Well, I think, providing tools that are easy to use and certainly easier to use than what most organizations have now, I think that's the number one thing you can do. You can also put in place, HCM or HR technologies that make it easier to, manage your benefits and see your payroll and, things that are important to employees. But I think what's even more important is to just make sure that you look at the overall tools and support that you're providing to employees. I mean, that's what, at the end of the day, what's going to make them really happy or enjoy their job or not, is being able to have access to the information when they need it, having tools that they can use, that they're trained on, that they have support for, or they can learn, either on their own or through guided training that you might provide as an organization. So just providing all the tools and support that an employee needs is some of the biggest ones. And of course, there's other intangibles like, the leadership style of your company and the culture of your company. That's going to affect employee satisfaction too, potentially even more so. But as far as like what a digital transformation could do or how technology itself could help, those are some of the main things.
For sure. I think those are all really good advice for companies that are looking to do a digital transformation. Hopefully this kind of helps you figure out what those first steps look like if you are wanting to go through a digital transformation.
Well, good. Well, thanks for your thoughts there, your follow-up thoughts on that video, and for all your feedback in this episode, Darian. And thank you to the audience for all the great questions that you had along the way and some of the feedback and input you've provided to this episode. So thank you for that. We'll sign off for now until next week. You can find new episodes in the meantime by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. And you can also see all the past episodes you might have missed by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com as well. Hope you all have a great week, and we'll see you next week on our next episode of Transformation Ground Control. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon.